Hey there, so it's been a while since I made a video, and I've been having trouble getting back into the swing of it since I got myself set up to record again. So I figured a good way to do that would be to do something that's quick and easy to record, doesn't really require any prep like my analysis videos do, and that I can just do regularly and upload regularly. So I really like Rimworld. This game is still technically in alpha, but is well worth the price as is. It is a colony management game where you crash land on a planet that's on the edge of colonized space. So I've never actually been in the game, and it's been several updates since I actually got to the end game. So I'm going to be attempting to get to the end game in this, and doing some tutorial stuff and some analysis like I like to do along the way. So the tutorial for this game is alright for teaching you the controls, and there's some helpers, but it's still good to have a bit of a video tutorial to get you started. So I'm going to jump right in and make a new colony. I'm not using any mods right now, but that could change in the future. If you're new to the game, I recommend just choosing the crash landed scenario. There's a bunch of things that you can do in the scenario editor to create all sorts of crazy starts, but you don't really want to mess around with those if you don't know the game that well, and I feel like Crash Landed is the easiest to learn the game with. So, choosing that, next. Alright, so this is where we choose the overall game difficulty. If you're new to the game, I recommend going with some challenge and choosing Cassandra. Basically, these three are AI storytellers. They essentially determine patterns in the overall behavior of the events that get thrown at you, because there's a lot of input randomness in this game. If you're starting out, Cassandra is good, but she gets kind of predictable and samey after a while, so most players who play a lot of the game like to go with Randy Random here, where you have no idea what you're going to get. And I usually play on rough, so I'm just going to go with that for now. I feel like rough is a fairly nice and balanced state to play the game in. I don't plan on save scumming, but I'm not going to go permadeath, because while I'm fine dealing with the input randomness, there's also some output randomness, i.e. one of your key guys gets randomly shot in the head by somebody who has basically no shooting skill and insta-dies. And in those cases, depending on how severe it is, I might want to reload. Alright, so we can determine just basics of how the world is generated. This seed here is randomized, but it's randomized from a dictionary as opposed to just being completely random. Like you see, I randomized the seed. It goes through a bunch of words. And I'm going to leave everything else as is. So now it's going to generate a world based upon some actual simulations of temperature and elevation and rainfall, and that will create our biomes and our seasons and all of that. And then it's going to do some basic generation of civilizations to lay down roads and settlements. Alright, so now we actually select where in this big world our colony is actually going to be. All of these little sites that have icons on them are pre-established civilizations, and we cannot actually found immediately next to them or of course on top of them. And let me just check in the factions. Alright, so we have two groups of Outlanders, which are basically just settlers that are at a similar level to what you are if you chose Crash Landed. And then we have tribals, which are at a lower level of technology, but they tend to be more numerous and they tend to have different things than what the Outlanders have. And these, the tribal guys, you can befriend them. We then have two groups of pirates who I believe you cannot ever make up with, and they'll just always be up for attacking you. And they'll always be against all other factions. I would like in the future to actually see more factions per map. Alright, so as far as selecting a starting point, if you are just starting out, I recommend going for this light-green area here. This is Temperate Forest, and it's probably the most balanced biome to start with. Next to Temperate Forest, I would say that... Oh wait, no, that's Tundra. There. I would say that Arid Shrubland is the next easiest. If only because it tends to have hotter temperatures, so it can be a bit more unforgiving than Temperate Forest is. And then after that, I would say Boreal Forest is next, because it's slightly harder to move around there. There's more terrain that slows you down, and there tend to be more dangerous creatures. And then we have Desert and Tundra, which are kind of at the same level with each other, just hot and cold respectively. Although deserts can actually be cold too. And then you have extreme versions of both of those climates. And then you have sea ice, which there is somehow a settlement in the middle of the sea ice. That does not seem realistic to me. You don't want to try living there. Just don't. Anyway, so for me, you can also see there's various mountains, and if you're starting out, I recommend searching for a place that is somewhat near a road, but is located in a place that either has, let me expand this terrain tab, that either has, not mountainous, I suggest small hills or large hills. Flat, you still get some stuff to mine out, but you don't get as much, and you don't get the potential protection. And then mountainous can be harder to work with if you're new. As for me, I definitely want to get a place that's near a road so I can trade, but I'd like to find one that is in between several biomes. I have no comment. I may have accidentally exited my selection. Right. Anyway, let's generate a new world. Yeah, pro tip, don't press the escape button while you're doing your game start. Alright, so I want to get a place that is kind of in the middle of several biomes, just so that I can show off more than one. But I also want to be on or near a road so that I can show that off. And I'd prefer to have hills or the like. Normally I would tend to just hit random and just go with whatever I get, unless it's an especially extreme biome. Oh, before I select this, I want to go to the Advanced tab, and I like a slightly larger than normal map for my map generation. You can go larger. It warns of performance issues, but I've never had them. However, larger ones can have some additional issues when it comes to gameplay if you want to collect all their resources and travel across them. Alright, so let's find a good spot here. Let me check the faction scan. Oh, so now we've got one friendly tribe and one hostile tribe. Alright, so that took way longer than it should have, but I did find my spot that I want. So this spot I find interesting because it has a road, a river, and small hills all together. It also has a relatively short growing season of only 20 days, but I think I can manage that. Alright, so I've selected all my options. Next. Alright, so here I will select the people that I'm going to be taking with me. Basically, these are the three that it rolled randomly for me, and I can choose to take them as they are, or I can re-roll them. But I can't determine their exact stats, and there's almost always going to be trade-offs, even if some are clearly better than others. So I'm probably just going to take what it gave me, but let me just look over to see that there aren't any massive blind spots in my skill range here. So when you're looking this over, the way to read this, these backstory bits, they're fun to hover over because they also give you some details on the larger universe. But these basically determine their base skills and also determine if there's any skills that they're incapable of. And that incapable tab is quite important. And then they have traits which have other various effects on them or the people around them. And then their skills, which are probably the most important. Obviously the number matters, but these little fires next to them mean that they're passionate or very passionate about that skill, and that means if they're just plain old passionate, they'll learn it 3 times faster than a normal person would. So most of the time, your people that are specialized in any given area are the people who are passionate, not necessarily the ones who start with higher skill. Although if you have a skill of like 15 or more, then that person's probably going to be one of your main guys. And additionally, if they're passionate about it, they actually get joy, which is part of the mood system I'll explain later, from doing that skill. You also want to check the health tab, but the main things you want to focus on are, first of all, if you have more than if you have more than one person who is incapable of hauling and or dumb labor, you are not in for a good start, because you really need them to be moving stuff around when you first start off. And yes, I'm thinking I am going to go with these guys. The only real blind spot I have is in intellectual, which I need for research. But hopefully I'll get somebody who's good at that, because otherwise these are relatively good people, if a bit quirky. Anyway, so you want to make sure that you have people capable of hauling and dumb labor. But otherwise, things that are good to have, it's really good to have a grower. It's really good to have somebody who's good at construction. Or if you don't have somebody who's good, somebody who's passionate can also be good, although some skills, having decent skill to start with is far preferable. So it's good to have somebody who's a decent grower or passionate about it, as well as somebody who is a decent or passionate miner, although that depends partially on how mountainous your map is. Cooking is useful but not necessary. Having at least one person with high medicine skill is good. The max for skills is 20, and 5 or below is absolutely terrible. 10 or below is kind of meh. And above 10 is where they actually start getting competent. And 15 or above, they are really good at that skill. So most people start out with low skills, but some people will start out with high skills, but they tend to be older people who have more health problems. you also want to look at their health and just see if they have anything that would reasonably seem like it would be incredibly debilitating, like, say, dementia or something, or just a serious health issue. So you also want at least one decent shooter, which I definitely have. I said decent medicine skill, decent construction, and growing. And ideally, you want somebody who's passionate about intellectual. I do not have that, but will make do. And these people seem reasonable. They're not going to be absolutely horrible, even if they may get on each other's nerves a bit. So I'm going to go with them. Alright. So now we are crash landing on this planet, and I am immediately going to pause the game. So, you can see we just landed. We have our 3 people. We also have a randomized animal companion who, honestly, at this point in the game, generally isn't that useful other than slightly improving mood. We've also landed with some supplies. So we have 30 medicine, we have a pistol, a bolt-action rifle, and a fairly good knife. And we also have some silver, which is what acts as money, although it can also be a construction crafting material, but I generally don't use it because it's also money. We have components, which are necessary for building some of the more technical things. We have 44 survival meals, which, unlike most food, does not spoil, and that will hold us over until we can start gathering our own food. We also have 450 steel, which is one of the core building materials, and 300 wood, which is another core building material. Alright, so before I actually do anything, I want to look around this area and see what I'm working with so I can decide where I'm actually going to set up my colony. Because we're not going to be sprawling over this entire map. It's just not practical with the travel time. So I'm looking for a few things. One is stuff like, for instance, right here where the rocky areas form natural choke points that I could easily defend. Another is stuff like this. This darker dirt is rich soil, which is the best natural thing to grow on. You can also grow on regular soil and gravel, but those are significantly less good than rich soil is. So I'm hopefully going to end up near an area of rich soil. I also want to pay attention to stuff like this, compacted steel, and other things that I can mine out. Eventually I will mine out the whole map, but I want to make sure there's a significant supply of those things near me wherever I set up. Ooh, that's a fair amount of silver ore. There's also components, and you can sometimes, here's components, compacted machinery, and you can sometimes also find gold or jade or uranium, or I think there might be one or two other things. Oh right, plasteel, which is like super steel. So those are the main things that I'm looking at for. Oh, and also, although this isn't as much of a consideration, I'm also looking for steam geysers, which I'm not... Aha, here's one. Steam geysers, once I get the proper research, will be one of the best ways to get power. So I'm actually tempted to set up my actual home right in the middle of this, just wall it off a bit, and then to get myself spread out to nearby areas. Let's see, there's quite a bit of fertile soil all over the place. And in case you're wondering, we're going to be spending quite a bit of time on this map before we move anywhere. My plan is to go and settle some other areas on the map, but to keep my first base for sure. Alright, so I think at this point I have narrowed things down. I am either going to set up in this area here because it's nice, defensible, and centralized, or I'm going to set up here where it's still somewhat defensible and it's got lots of fertile soil as well as compacted plasteel. I think, however, I'm gonna go with down here for now, both because it'll be faster to move my stuff and also because the short growing season means that rich soil will be slightly less useful. I may end up relocating later and just keeping a place down here for whatever, or deconstructing it. But for now, let's set myself up here. So before I do anything, I want to actually select all this stuff and unrestrict it so my people can actually carry it. And then I also want to get my people equipped with weapons. So select this guy. So there's a lot of interface elements here. I will go through them as they're important and explain a bit. The good thing about this game is while there is a lot, and I mean a lot, of depth and information to it, you don't have to engage with all of that depth immediately to actually succeed in the game. Alright, so this guy cannot fight at all, so he's not going to be getting anything. So you're my best shooter. I think I want you to have my bolt-action rifle, and you can have the pistol. And that knife will just sit around for whenever we get somebody who's good at melee. So now that I've done that, I've assigned my guys to pick up weapons. They need jobs to do. So the items along the bottom of the screen here, these tabs are where you do pretty much everything that is actually having a direct effect on the world. There's a few direct orders you can give your people, but for the most part, you are working in these tabs. And they've done a nice thing where they've arranged these tabs roughly from left to right in order of most to least important. So the Architect tab is where you're going to be spending a lot of your time. The Architect is where you basically give out all of your orders to do tasks other than actually fighting. It's where you basically set up tasks to be done, and then anybody who can do that task will go and do it whenever they decide that's their next priority, or you can manually tell them to do it by right-clicking on the task after selecting the person. So the first thing I want to do is go to zone/area and create a stockpile to store all of our stuff. Because for one, having it nice and centralized is a good thing, but for another, a lot of this stuff will actually degrade if left out in the open. So I want to actually, because the place that I'm going to be setting up is so close to where I landed, I'm actually not going to set up a stockpile first. First, I'm going to actually give an order under structure to start building the walls that are going to make up the start of this settlement. So I need to seal this up. And then let's go across there. You may notice how it says not enough stored wood on my thing. And by the way, if I click and hold, I can select different materials to build out of. But wood is a good default building material. It's fast to build with, and it's generally very easy to renew. Steel isn't super hard to renew, but it is needed for a lot of things, and it is actually limited on any given map. So the whole reason it's saying not enough stored is simply because I don't have any wood actually in a stockpile. If I were to create a stockpile around where the wood is already, 1 second, you'll notice now in this upper left corner I now have wood and metal listed in my stockpile, and now when I go to build the wall it won't actually give me that not enough stored message. So let's see, I want a door to go just right here for now. I'm probably going to be renovating this later if I keep it. And then boop, boop, boop. It's often better than doing this to just actually just make a building, or to grab one of these buildings that already exists and make that your initial home. However, I'm doing this just because I find it convenient. The thing is that this will take more work to turn into a proper home than just making a building of the right size for various reasons I'll get into later. So I've set that to be worked on, and that construction is going to get higher priority than the stockpile will, but now I'm going to also lay down the stockpile so anybody who's not constructing will start hauling any items that they're allowed to into the stockpile. And I'll delete that one. Actually, you know what? I'm going to make 2 stockpiles. Usually I wait to do this, but in this case I don't think I really need to. So, actually, I'm not going to make it there because the stone is a bit faster to walk on. I'm going to make it here. So this stockpile, if I go into the storage tab, I can affect what priority this stockpile gets, what things can be stored in it, all of that stuff. And I'm going to hit clear all, and I'm going to set it to just store resources that don't degrade when left outside. Oh wait, wood does degrade, albeit slowly. And then I also want manufactured. I want to store... Oh wait, no. Where was components again? Ah, there's components. I also want to store components there. And then this will just be a general stockpile. I will set it to low priority so that anything that can be stored here will be stored there before it gets stored over here. And now I'll let my people get to work. And I'm actually running out of time on this recording, so I think that's gonna do it for this episode. Didn't get much done, but I assure you a lot more will get done next time. So see you then.